Welcome to Restoring Education in America with Priscilla Rahn. She's a master educator and author, leading the conversation to restore the American mind through wisdom, virtue, and truth.
Welcome back to Restoring Education in America. I'm Priscilla Rahn, your host, and I'm so excited to introduce you to my guest today. This is my brother from another mother. His name is Terris Todd. Come on in, Terris. It's great to see you.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm so excited to talk to you. We talk actually regularly, but this time we get to be reunited on the radio and on the podcast to talk about some exciting things that are going on. But before I get into the interview, I want to tell people a little bit more about you. So my good friend here, Terris Todd, is the Director of Coalitions and Outreach for Project 21 Black Leadership Network and the author of Just Being There, A Parent's Guide to Raising Children. Terris recently served as the advisor of Coalitions engagement at the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C., which is how you and I met. And one thing that's really impressive about your resume is that in 2020, you were appointed by the White House to be the executive director of the White House Initiative on Educational Excellence for African Americans in the United States Department of Education, where you focused on working with educational professionals in the public and private sectors to elevate and bring awareness to the challenges faced by African American students in the country, and on leveraging resources to help ensure students are prepared for college and productive careers that contribute to the well-being of society. You're also the host of In the Classroom with Mr. Todd podcasts on Anchor and Spotify, and you were born and raised in Battle Creek, Michigan. You've worked as a public school teacher, administrator, college instructor. I mean, there's so many more things that you've done that we've talked about, but your most important job is husband to Miss Karen, and you have 3 daughters. You're a girl dad. So welcome again to the show tonight.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
So let's get into it, Mr. Terris. You have worn many, many hats, and your story of how you even got into politics is really remarkable. You've been an educator, administrator, pastor, policy leader. You worked in the legislature. What first inspired you and your passion for education and service?
You know what? My journey into college, I first off, fresh out of high school, I went to Norfolk State University and HBCU in Norfolk, Virginia. That's where I got my start. As a matter of fact, I didn't choose education at the time. I was going into mass communications and whatnot. Originally, I wanted to be something of like a sound engineer or something like that, but they didn't have that kind of program. So what I ended up doing is finishing up my freshman year there, and then I transferred back to Michigan, where I ended up attending local community college at Kellogg Community College in Battle Creek, Michigan for my sophomore year, and then I transferred over to Western Michigan University. And going there, it was really my mom. My mom had actually told me when I came back to Michigan, she said, you should consider going into education, because being a Black American male, males were very rare and in much need. And she said Western Michigan University had a great education program. It was a 5-year program, as a matter of fact. And so that's how I got into education. It was really my mom. It sounded like a great idea. So I said, let me check it out. So that was my major. My minor was physical education. And then as I really got into physical ed as a minor, I then started thinking like, man, I'm learning more in my minor than my major. I mean, because at the time, I was really into weightlifting and all that stuff and physical fitness and learning the body and whatnot. So I'm like, man, I should have went into physical therapy. But anyway, that's how I got into education. And once I finished up at Western Michigan University, I got my undergrad and then my graduate degree in educational leadership, which set me up to go into administration. And so at that point, I ended up getting hired with Battle Creek Public Schools, where I started out as a 6th grade teacher, teaching social studies. And then my superintendent at the time, Dr. Charles Coleman, he had said it was an opportunity at the high school, one of the principals up there. And so I had been in secondary education, and then I got into, as you know, collegiate level instruction as well. And the rest is history from that point.
Now, I think if I had known you back then, I would have thought you would have been a cool teacher and a cool administrator.
I was the best.
You were the best, of course. You got great results.
At least that's what the students tell me. You know, many of them are anywhere from like 25 to 39 years old now. And I'm still in touch with a lot of them, to tell you the truth.
See, that's a sign of a great education leader. And we have something in common. We met when you came to Denver for the Western Conservative Summit, and I introduced myself to you. At the time, I was the vice chair of the Colorado GOP, and you were the vice chair of the Michigan GOP, and we had that connection. And I thought that was like super cool that we had that connection. And you were not always a Republican. You were a staunch Democrat and president of the NAACP in Michigan. Tell a little bit about your transition from being a Democrat and leader in the NAACP to finding your way into being a conservative and a Republican in the state legislature.
Well, truthfully, I've always been conservative. And like most people say that most Black Americans are conservative people. Again, I fell into that whole move that, you know, you just kind of go along with what your parents and everybody just known to do. But really, I got into politics. I wasn't in politics at all prior to even getting into actual politics. I was a civil service commissioner for the local fire department. And so I served as a commissioner for the fire department. So they're really near and dear to my heart, first responders and so on. And I got a call. It was a phone call from my then chairman of the county board, who called me up one day and asked if I would consider taking his seat because he was getting married and moving out of the area. And so I said, well, let me pray about it. I got with my bishop, got with my wife and family, and they, confirmed that, they believe that God is opening another door for me, another path. And so that's how I got into that. And so I called him back and I said, hey, yeah, I'll do it. And so at that time, he took me to meet, some folks in the local Democrat Party. I never met these people. I didn't know them. And still, even after I got involved, I didn't hang with those folks. You know what I mean? So I actually served as a Calhoun County Commissioner for 10 years. So I served 5 terms. But I will say this, around my first term, second term, when Obama was getting into office, I had a lot of experiences, man. And when I saw what direction he was going and some of the policies he was pushing, I always credit him with saying, hey, it was Obama that really helped me to decide, that I didn't belong there. And so, but also I had some things going on locally from the local Democrat Party as well. Number one, when Obama and them were first running in 2008, him and Joe Biden came to Battle Creek, Michigan, in a rally, and they asked my bishop originally to do the opening prayer. And they did background or whatever. And so they turned him down. And then they came to me and I said, well, why are they coming to me if they have my bishop? So I didn't know they had dropped him, though. And I called him and found out. But anyway, fast forward. So we get to the event and I turned it down because there was a gentleman there that said that when I get on stage to do the opening prayer, I couldn't name the name of Christ. And I said, well, you got the wrong guy. And he said, oh, you're not gonna do it now? I said, absolutely not. I said, he said, oh, man, well, can you find somebody here that could do it? And I said, sure. And I looked around and there was a pastor and his dad in the audience from Lansing, Michigan. And I went over to them and I told them, I said, hey, this is what's going on. And they said, I can't name the name of Christ. So that pastor's dad, who drove down to Battle Creek from Lansing, Michigan, he said, I think I know what kind of prayer they're looking for, more of all inclusive. I said, well, I'm not down with that. So he ended up doing it. And then in 2012, when Obama was running for re-election, at that time, I was the president of the local NACP. And my first vice president came to me and said that they had gone to the local Democrat Party headquarters, campaign headquarters, and they were looking for yard signs or whatever. And they said that, would you believe that, because when she called me, she said, I am done with the Democrat Party or whatever. And I said, well, wait, what's going on? So she told me that they found on their table, they had big buttons. You know how you wear those campaign buttons or whatever, but they had big buttons on their table of Obama with big ears and a tail on him like he's a monkey. And I said, wow, really? I said, yeah. They were fiery. And she said it was some of her and some other ladies from her church that had gone there. And so they said they gave up a piece of their mind and they got out of there and they asked, how could you have these offensive buttons on your table? And so it was just one thing after the other, to be honest with you, Priscilla. And in 2014, I ran for state rep, had never been primaried. The local Democrats actually got someone to primary me. And that's when I knew they couldn't support me, And so I said, okay, here we go. They can't support me. And so it was a three-way race, and I came in second place. The guy they were backing ended up edging us by like point whatever. And so I came back as a write-in candidate. So I'm splitting all these votes. So now I'm getting contacted from people all over the state. Another African-American gentleman drives down. He was from Battle Creek, but he lived in Detroit at the time. He drove from Detroit, and I took my wife and I out to dinner. And he was saying that, he asked me, he said, so I hear you being a spoiler. I said, what are you talking about? He said, are you coming back as a write-in candidate? I said, yeah, I'm not breaking the law. He said, nah, man, you got to make them kiss your ring and all this. I said, man, I'm cut from a different cloth. I said, let's not forget, they called me. I didn't call them, So that's what started the journey. But I ended up pulling out of that race in 2014 for the state legislature. About a week or two ahead of that election, the Republican wins. Just to show you how God is working now. The Republican wins. 5 days later, he calls me up. I go meet with him, and he asked me to consider going to work with him in the state legislature. I said, are you serious? So again, I got with my bishop, I prayed, got with my wife. And so I went, my bishop told me the Lord told him to tell me to go. And when I get there, I would put the R behind my name because that's where our values really lied. And so the rest is history from that point. And then a year and a half in with the Republican Party, I got encouraged to run for vice chair of the state party there. I was in my second term. And then now I'm in 5 years now. In my second term, I got a call from the White House, and it was President Trump's administration that called me up and asked me to take a position for a White House initiative, which is what landed me in D.C. And what's interesting is my bishop had prophesied to me about at least a decade ago, maybe longer than that now. And he told me the Lord showed him that I was going to be going to Washington, D.C. I said, really? So I never knew how I was getting here. But as I served as the vice chair of the state party, a lot of people were asking, so Terris, what's your next move? I mean, I said, well, I believe the Lord is sending me to Washington. They said, oh, you're going to run for Congress? I said, well, if that's how I get there, but I said, I'm not certain. And so that's how I landed in D.C. And ever since I've been here, Priscilla, God has opened up doors. I've always gotten a phone call for all the positions that I've gotten, including the one that I'm in now, because of relationships. I didn't apply for anything. So I know the hand of God is in this.
If you're just tuning in, my special guest is Terris Todd. He is the Director of Coalitions and Outreach for Project 21, and he's the former appointee to the White House, the Executive Director of the White House Initiative on Educational Excellence for African Americans in the United States Department of Ed. So when you led, Terris, the White House Initiative, you had a big responsibility. What were some of the biggest challenges you saw facing the Black students?
You know what? When I got appointed by the Trump administration, it was COVID. COVID had hit, and so one of the greatest struggles that many of them were having were the ones that lived in rural areas, but also in urban areas as well. But one of the greatest challenges was access to Wi-Fi, because everything had gone remote. Everything was being done on computers and whatnot. And so as a result of that, a lot of the challenges came with students were being seen doing work on their parents or even their own cell phones because they didn't have computer or they didn't have Wi-Fi access or whatever. So doing a lot of homework and schoolwork from their mobile phones and mobile devices were challenging. Those who lived out in rural areas, like if you go in the South or if you are here anywhere, I mean, there's Blacks that live in rural areas in every state. But when you go south, I mean, there are more of them that live in rural areas, out in the middle of nowhere. And so they didn't have Wi-Fi. Many of them didn't have, strong Wi-Fi. And so it was very costly to run fiber optic cables out to those areas. And so as a result of that, one of my leading virtual roundtables that I actually hosted when I served the White House at the Department of Ed was around technology and access to technology and stuff for those students. And so as a result of that, we had a woman on there from AT&T, and she had talked to us about a lot of the work that they were doing to set up mobile, kind of like mobile hotspots. And they were partnering with local school districts to use their school buses. So they equipped the school buses in those rural areas with hotspots, to give those students out in those rural areas access to the internet. And so That was a big challenge. I think that's the one that sticks out the most because of COVID and the condition of our country and our nation, or the world, should I say, at that time. And so bringing those people together on the table to give parents and give educators some information on how they can actually help their students, I think that was the greatest one that sticks out to me.
Well, thank you for doing that, because as a teacher who was in the classroom, I'm still in the classroom during COVID, learning how to use technology was a really, really big deal, but I feel more proficient. Thank you for all the work that you did. So now, fast forward, you are working at Project 21. You did work at the Heritage Foundation. We all know Heritage Foundation and the wonderful work that they do. And now you're working at Project 21. Give us a brief explanation about what Project 21 does.
Project 21, just to give you a history on it, Project 21 is a program of the National Center for Public Policy Research. It is a 501c3 nonprofit, non-political, nonpartisan kind of thing, but we are conservative in our values. And Project 21 was birthed out of that. It's the Black Leadership Network arm of the National Center. And it was launched in 1992. At that time, the Rodney King issue was going on in the early 90s. And so the folks at National Center realized that Black conservative voices weren't even considered. You know, they noticed that all the people that were being interviewed on national television and national news outlets, none of them were speaking from a conservative perspective. And so, case in point, as a result, Project 21 was birthed. Our chairman, Horace Cooper, was a part of that founding members, and several other, I think, Ennis, oh man, what is his first name? Niger Ennis, Niger Ennis. He was one of the founding members as well, but there were several others, but that's way before my time. But yeah, so they launched Project 21, 21 meaning the 21st century. So as a result of that, and we've always taken pride in elevating the Black conservative voices all over the country and the world. And so as a result, what we do is we build and we recruit ambassadors like yourself. And I really appreciate and thank God for you that we had a relationship prior to here, because I just went back to people that I knew and had relationship with, and I knew that the Lord had given to actually come to you and ask you if you would be willing to be an ambassador. And so ambassadorship is just all volunteer, but it's just people who are professionals from all walks of life, but they are conservative in their values and in principle, and they're people of faith from all walks of life, different industries and whatnot. And we help to elevate them in media, be it radio, be it podcasts like this, be it television or whatever, Fox News, One America News, you name it. I mean, we try our best to actually get those folks and get their voice elevated in those outlets. And so that's pretty much it in a nutshell. But people also write op-eds like yourself. You're an author, and we thank God that you actually sent us 5 copies of your wonderful book about education. But we also have authors, and we have people who are doing great things all over the country. Now it's just about accessing and finding out who those people are. And so one of the biggest initiatives we got now is dealing with fatherhood and family and stuff like that, things that we're going to tackle. But also we're going to be launching our Onyx program, which is consistent of those in the Gen Z generation, those who are young adults now, to actually recruit some folks. And if you guys know some people, those of you who are watching this, if you know some young Black conservatives that are in your local community or in other states that you may know in your family, whatever, please send them our way, because we really want to launch and really elevate their voice as well from a conservative perspective, because sometimes they get shut out as well, especially those on college campuses, for sure.
Well, we're definitely seeing, this battle between Black liberal and Black conservative voices, and, what's going on in the country and how we're treated and the names that we're called as Black conservatives. But as you started out saying, most Black families are conservative. We go to church, we have family values, we believe in fatherhood. Those are the things that we definitely believe in. But I'm so grateful for Project 21 for helping to give a platform and a voice. I mean, I would never have had an opportunity to be interviewed on Fox News or on radio or invited to give my opinion through op-eds about things that impact our community. And so it's really critical. Yeah. So when we think about, Terris Todd, what it means to restore education in America, what is it personally personally mean to you to restore education in America?
Well, sticking to the basics. I mean, a classical great American education. I mean, 2+2 will always be 4. I don't care what other folks say. It's not 5. It's not 3 or whatever.
You don't believe in that woke math?
No, we don't believe in that nonsense. I mean, we know what men are. We know what women are. We know that God only created us male and female. So we're not buying that because our ancestors taught us that, right? And so to say anything otherwise is to recolonize our way of thinking into some other nonsense that leads to a path of darkness. And so restoring education is very important. It's just sticking to the basics, man. I mean, math, reading, writing, and what's happening now, because education has been so clouded with all this other stuff, all these other distractions. Now we're graduating people that's only reading at 3rd and 4th grade reading levels. That's not cool at all. You're talking about an era now with more technological advancements where our students have access to the world in the palm of their hand, but yet they're more illiterate than we were. Because why? Because they don't have to read. Now when you add AI into this thing, so that's why everything needs to have some kind of, some parameters around it, because, if AI is going to do all the reading and writing for them, then we're creating more of an ignorant populace than we understand. And so anyway, restoring education just simply means that, sticking to the basics, reading, writing, math, science, and whatnot, the basics of it, sticking to those kind of things. And if you think about it, I mean, it worked for many of our great inventors. It worked for Frederick Douglass. It worked for all these other great inventors, Black American inventors, and so on, all over the world. Why is that changing? Because now they're trying to infuse these other ideologies, and all they're doing is destroying the public school system. And that's why, as conservatives, we're for school choice, because we want families to be able to decide what they believe is best fit for their own kids. And so everybody likes that. There was a time where Black Americans didn't get a choice, and so now we have one, and you're telling us we shouldn't want to take that choice. So that's a bunch of nonsense. But anyway, restoring education, having the choice and having the options are very important, especially for those who are special needs or have other special needs that they have in education and whatnot. They should be able to choose what's the best option for them and their family.
So Terris, you talk a lot about faith. How has faith impacted your leadership and your values as you lead in the community?
Well, I always say that I'm a loving, kind, and loyal leader. I stick to the basics. So my faith is everything, it's the foundation of everything, and seeing things from more of a biblical world perspective, seeing things through the lens of God and how he sees things. And so, and how we see people. And I think that's why many of us, like yourself and myself and others, that's been in education, I think that's why we have great fruit on the tree, because we've kept our faith at the center and at the core of everything. In 2021, I was actually invited back to my city to a class reunion. And this was a class of people that I was their principal at the high school, but they wanted to invite me to their class reunion, their 10-year reunion. And I'm like, wow. It brought tears to my eyes, and it was like, man, who would ever think to invite their principal back to their class reunion? So I'm being invited. And matter of fact, back in 2020, also during the time when I was being appointed by the White House, by the Trump administration, I was also being inducted into my local school district's Hall of Fame as an educator. And interestingly, fast forward now on November 18th, coming up here, I'm flying back to Michigan because my former high school, where I was class president all 4 years of high school, they're inviting me back because I'm now being inducted into their Distinguished Alumni Award. And so they want to present me with this award as a distinguished alumni. And so it's a beautiful thing, but I always attribute it to the fact that that God is truly, he's amazing. And my faith has always been at the center and at the core and leading and guiding me in everything that I do. And so, but it's everything to me, even how I'm a husband and how I'm a father and how I'm a brother in Christ to you or whoever, how I'm a neighbor to the people in my building, everything comes back to faith.
Well, Terris, I know you are a man of faith and you have always been upstanding and a man of your word, and we need more of that. It's so refreshing. And as I look at the time, I'm like, I can't believe I've got to land our plane here, bro. But we're only a phone call away, and there's so much great work that you're doing at
I
Project
appreciate it.
21 and around the nation. Still, you have so many contacts at the U.S. Department of Education, and you've introduced me to different individuals at the U.S. Department of Education, which is really inspiring. And I just want to thank you for being so selfless in your knowledge. As you said, God has opened all of these doors for you. You haven't had to apply for any of these jobs, that God has placed you there. And it's such a testament of how you have lived out your life in a way that I believe has been really pleasing to the Lord, and such a great example, because, our community, we're starving for really strong Black male leaders for our young boys. And we've got to get, stronger families, have, we're telling boys and girls, when you grow up, get married first, kind of like what Charlie Kirk said, get married, have babies, lots of babies, and just be a family man. I think that's going to really heal our nation. So
absolutely.
I want to thank you for joining me today. I want to thank all of the people that are listening and that join me tomorrow. And here's my last word to everyone who's listening. Educating the mind without the heart is no education. So seek wisdom, cultivate virtue, and speak truth. Until next time, you guys be blessed, and be blessed, Terris.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Restoring Education in America with Priscilla Rahn. Visit PriscillaRahn.com to connect or learn how you can sponsor future episodes to keep this message of faith, freedom, and education on the air.